All right, so my name is Daryl White. I run Carte Blanche Media, and today I have as my guest Kristian Cotta. He's an entrepreneur here in Phoenix, Arizona, also an avid periscoper. It's my understanding and my knowledge there, because he's got over 1,000 followers. Just going to talk to Kristian about social media, talk to him about Periscope, entrepreneurship, all that. And thank you so much for being here with me today, Kristian. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Daryl. I appreciate it. Appreciate you, taking the time to help me get my message out, share my values with other people so that they can see, if what I have to share aligns with them, how I can help them. And if there's an opportunity or possibility to find out if there's a fit for us to work together.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and start asking questions. Everyone, feel free to tell a little bird if you'd like to, so we can kind of fill up this room if you'd like. And I will try and monitor the comments. I don't have a co-host at this point. And I kind of offered Kate, and if you're still listening right now, this would be a great opportunity for you to jump in as a co-host if you wanted to. But because we have had a couple discussions about that. But my first question for you, Kristian, is just tell me a little bit about like how you got into entrepreneurship or decided to go into entrepreneurship.
Do you want the recent story within the last 5 years, or do you want from
we could go with the old, we could go with the way back story and then bring it up, freshen it up with the like in the last 5 years story. Whatever,
well, we talked about the last time when we hopped on here with Jeremy, we talked about the idea that, a lot of people consider themselves entrepreneurs in spirit. And that's a great place to start. But if you want to go by definition, entrepreneurship means to create new money. And the majority of people that are entrepreneurs in spirit aren't monetizing. And so if we go way back into spirit, the reality is that I grew up in an entrepreneurial family environment where my parents owned their own business. I never was one of those people that watched my parents go clock into a job and talk about how much they hated their job. I didn't have that. I grew up where they owned their own business. They were in real estate, constantly creating new opportunity, new money. And so that was ingrained into who I was. That was all I knew. So for the longest time, that's just what I thought it was. I thought you grew up, you started your own business, and you came up with ideas and you created that. It wasn't until I got older that I realized that that was a different philosophy and a different way of looking at it than what was considered the norm, the quote unquote norm. So, as far back as I can remember, do you remember selling the world's finest chocolates, little chocolate bars when you're in grade school?
I didn't, but I sold candy when I was like in sixth grade. I would go to the local store, buy a bunch of like penny candy and sell.
So I grew up. I went to Catholic school all the way from kindergarten through high school, and for our fundraisers, we would have that time of year where we would sell chocolate bars, world's finest chocolate, and they'd say our school name on it, and the money would go towards helping for whatever the fundraiser was. And then there was prizes. So I can remember being in, I think it was third or fourth grade, and I wanted to win this. Because to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a competitive spirit. Not that you're so competitive with beating other people, but beating what you think is your best. And so I can remember saying, okay, I don't want to just sell one box. I want to sell 30. And that was the goal I set for myself. And we had 30 days to sell as many of these as we could. And so at that time, Batman was big. It was in the movie theaters. And I said, where are my clients? And how can I find people that would want to buy chocolate? Well, Batman was coming out and the lines were lined up around the movie theater. why wait till people get inside the movie theater? So I went and I walked along the lines and I sold people chocolate bars to take into the movie theater, knowing that here they are, they're going to go into a movie theater, they'll spend $1 to buy a chocolate bar. So that's my first experience with entrepreneurship. And then, you know, going forward, I mean, at 28 years old, I started a commercial real estate development company with my best friend. And we did, you know, horizontal development, land entitlement work for CVS, for McDonald's, for these big corporate companies throughout Texas, because I saw an opportunity to go to these small towns where the big developers didn't want to go. And I knew that there was a need for these clients to be there. And I went and I pitched them and I had this idea. So I started that. I had a lot of success, and the real estate market turned. I went through tough times. I never considered myself broke, which is the key thing, is that never once, you know, I might have been financially tested, but I never considered myself broke up here, because I knew that, you know, the skill set that I had allowed me to do more. And so now we're at the point where I have the ability to be able to show people that, you know, the skill set, the talent, the gifts, it's 10% that can be learned. But what you have the ability to do is to build on what it is that's most important to you and take those to the marketplace and figure out what you're best at, instead of trying to you know, learn how to be good at something that you're really not that great at. You can learn some of those skills and improve them and turn weaknesses into strengths. But if you do that while enhancing what you're already good at, now you have the ability to be unstoppable. So, you know, my entrepreneurial journey, like I said, I'm a product of my environment, and a lot of people have to recreate and reestablish their environment in order to thrive as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I've got a question for you then, as far as that goes. So are you born, you said you were doing real estate development in Texas. Are you born and raised here in Phoenix and stuff, or you just kind of came here? When did you get here?
So I grew up in California, in San Francisco. While I was in grade school, my parents were in commercial real estate. They sold everything they had in California. They moved up to the Pacific Northwest, to Portland. So I went to high school, junior high and high school in Portland. I went to college up at Washington State. While I was in college, my parents sold a lot of what they had in Portland and up in the Oregon area. And then they moved to Phoenix. That was the hot market. So while I was in college, I came and visited Phoenix, and I said, you know what, the weather's great. I love the atmosphere. I decided to move here after college. My parents had bought property in Texas, and that's what I went out there. I started working with them, helping them in Texas, and I saw this opportunity. So that's when I approached my best friend at the time, and I said, look, let's do this. There's a huge opportunity for us to create our own opportunity instead of doing it for somebody else, because we'd both been in brokerage. We're making good money buying and selling commercial property for other people. But the thing that I didn't like is that I wasn't truly an entrepreneur. You know, I was a salesman, and I wanted to create my own opportunities, because that's what it's about. It's about seeing a need in the marketplace, or seeing a window of opportunity, or creating a door where doors didn't exist.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And I think that's where some of the most successful entrepreneurs kind of find their niche, is finding that gap, where there is something where there wasn't before and whatnot. So let me ask you about this. So you said, you kind of told me the Wayback Machine, like what you were doing several years ago. Where are you now? What's your involvement with entrepreneurship and Scopemob? How does that play?
So the Scopemob is just a mastermind. You know, that's our group. I created that community for people that wanted to be able to network, because you're net worth is equivalent to your network, you know, or like they say, your two most important things are your Rolodex and your reputation. So it all comes back to relationships. Now, there was something that I wanted to share on here, because I just had this conversation, and a lot of people are talking about how to create more value, creating more value. I got to, you know, show people how much value I can create. That's cliche. It's not about creating value, because that's a given. So if you're trying to, that's like saying, you know, that's like saying, I want to be successful. Well, no shit. Well, everyone wants to be successful. If you don't want to be successful, something's wrong with you. And so it's not about creating value. What it's about is it's about finding people where your values align. Because if you find those people whose values align with what it is that you're talking about, then it doesn't matter. You're gonna be giving them value because they believe in the same things as you. They maybe are looking for something to bridge a gap. You know, we talked about those skills. Those skills can be learned, but it doesn't matter what kind of skills you have. The systems that you put into place, those are learned behaviors, and you can learn those and you can get good at those. But what it comes down to is the core values that you have. So, like, I'll give you an example right now. And this is running rampant in the marketplace, online, everywhere. Everyone is trying to appeal when they sell. They're trying to appeal in a sense that it's a scarcity. It's a scarcity mentality. So if you don't do this, you're going to miss out because everybody else is doing this. That's bullshit. That's everyone. You can read through that. Like if I told you, Daryl, if you don't hire me, then guess what? You might miss out on the ability to be successful. Bullshit. You can go out and create success. What you're looking for is you're looking for someone that you can trust and respect. So it's about creating trust, respect, and like before it is me telling you that, you know, the fear of missing out or the scarcity. Everyone's doing that. They're starting at the bottom of the value pyramid. They're trying to talk to you about the fear of what you don't have. And if I go and I sit here and I start talking to you about what you're not doing and what you're missing out on, and you go think about it, and you lack and actually regress in your motivation to create any kind of success for yourself, you're going to resent me. Whereas if I sit here and I tell you about what my values are and how they align, do we have a fit? Is there a fit for you and I working together, Daryl? Do you like I'm a person of high integrity. I'm a person of character and of accountability and taking action. That's what I stand for. Now, do you stand for those things? Because if you do, then you know what, Daryl? I think that I can help you. And I can help you enhance the skills that you already have, and I can teach you more skills that are going to take you to the next level in your business. Does that sound like something that you would be interested in? Because whatever you're missing out on, you're going to miss out on it regardless of if you work with me or you work with somebody else. But if you like the values that I bring to the table, then we can work together.
You're absolutely right about that. And one thing that I'll just throw out there, I think a lot of it has to do with a book that was written by an Arizonan. There, you probably heard about it, Influence, right? By Robert Cialdini. And in that book, he talks about scarcity, and I think that's why everybody is using that now these days. I've seen I've seen landing pages where you go to it and then immediately they have the countdown timer, like 15 minutes. If you don't go ahead and opt in 15 minutes, this offer will go away. And they go to that offer the next day, and then the 15 minutes starts again and stuff. So and it kind of becomes a little bit to the point where it's not really something that will help out. It looks like your video is going away right now, Kristian. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I can still hear you. So we'll go ahead and move on here. Next question for you would be, let me ask you about, so what, outside of Scopemob, what are you working on right now there as far as entrepreneurial endeavors there? I think you and Jeremy both have podcasts, is that right? And if you want to put links in the sidebar.
Yeah, my podcast actually just went live on iTunes today. So I'm going to start, promoting it. I'm going to start promoting it. You can go search it on iTunes. It's called Healthy Success, but it's about these habits that I'm talking about. It's, there's Maslow's hierarchy of value. And so at the lowest level is truth and simplicity. And at the highest level, it's about those core values. It's what we just talked about. Do our values align? And so, for the last 20 or 30 years, everybody is growing, building their business around this idea that, let me give you an example. When I first recreated my website, I had this idea in mind. Here's what I can do to help you, Daryl. My specialty is networking, and I can help you be seen and heard in the marketplace. Sounds good, right? Sounds decent. Okay. My specialty is how to get seen and heard. The problem with that is that what I'm telling you is that you're not getting seen and heard. And you might think that you are. So then now our values don't align. So if I come back and I say, look, here's what my values are. My values are integrity, taking action, and congruency. And when I say integrity, I mean in all areas of your life. So when I say that I'm a fast action taker, that I get shit done, and that I can help you instill more of that into your business and into your life, I mean that in my physical life, I mean that in my business, and I mean that in my relationships, in all areas, okay? That's the integrity and the congruency across all platforms. Now, if I tell you on my website that here's what I do, I help, not hype you. So you might not like everything that I tell you, but that's okay, because I'm not here for you to like me. I'm here for you to get results. And you know what? You're going to like me if I help you get results. You're not, you might, if I go for you liking me and you don't get results, you're going to end up resenting me. And so if I put on my website, I can help you get seen and heard. I'm making an assumption that you're not getting seen and heard. And I'm also going from that place of scarcity. But if I come at it and I say, look, I'm going to help you, not hype you. I'm going to tell you what's evolving, what I see evolving in the marketplace, because I see that it's not about this scarcity. People aren't about that. They're moving away from that. You hear it all the time. It's prosperity. Okay. So in this prosperity, this era of, abundance, what's going to differentiate us? If I come in and I put on my about page how great I am and the things I've done and how you should work with me because I have all these things on my resume. This is how great I am. All I'm doing is lumping myself in with about 500 other people. But if I come on here and I say, this is what I believe, if you believe it too, there might be a fit for us to work together. But we have to have that conversation, because I don't know if that's going to work until I've had that conversation first. Now it's like, okay, well, shit, who's this guy that's not wearing a suit and tie and a hat that says be a boss? Because frankly, if you judge me based on what I'm wearing, it's not a fit. It's not a fit for me. So to go back to what I'm doing on my website, I have my podcast, obviously, which is about helping people create habits for success. And how do I do that? I interview successful people and I find out what they're doing, because you know what? not every single person that's successful is going to align with your values. It all comes back to values, not value, because if the values are there, you're going to find the value. That's what's important.
No, that's kind of like a marriage. Even if you are not aligned on the values there, then you're probably not going to get along that well, or it's going to be a difficult ride there. Let me ask you this. I guess you can share your links towards the end there, but let me ask you about kind of mentors there. And like, do you have any mentors that you look up to or have looked up to in the past outside of your family? Of course.
I think every mentor, every coach has a coach. I don't think you can't be. How do you learn? How do you learn without having mentors, without having somebody that's done this before, who's tested the path? And so it comes back to, there's a great quote: every master was once a disaster. The apprentice becomes the sage. You know, if maybe you're into Star Wars, you know, the apprentice and the Jedi, like whatever it is, there's a reason that those come through storytelling, because of course I have, you know, mentors. I mean, one of my mentors, his name's Jeffrey Combs. He focuses on emotional discipline. I've got mentors that I follow in the online world. Now, it doesn't mean that you copy what they're doing, because you have to take bits and pieces of that apply to where there's gaps in your skill set, so that you can go and fill those gaps to enhance your skill set. So that's what's most important.
Right. And I guess as far as books and that type of thing, obviously you've read a couple books in your day, I'm guessing. So what would you say were the top, like 3 or 3 to 5 books that you say as far as entrepreneurs that they should be reading?
Well, one that goes unspoken, you know, far too often, especially for an entrepreneur. If the definition of entrepreneur is to create new money, and most entrepreneurs aren't creating money, you know, they're in that position where they're saying, I'm not making money, or I'm struggling. How do we help entrepreneurs get their money mind in set? We read a book by somebody that a lot of people know, but they haven't read the book. T. Harv Eker, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It's reprogramming your money blueprint, the way that your mind looks at money. That's one book. That's one of the books that I started with. Another great book, obviously, you've heard people talk about The Go-Giver. I like Simon Sinek, and there's 2 books. Everyone knows Start With Why, but the one that a lot of people don't know about, which I like better than Start With Why, is that Leaders Eat Last. And and then I actually have a couple of books that were recommended to me that I haven't read yet, but these are on my list to start reading. One's called Winning the Story Wars, and it has to do with what we're talking about. Changing the way that you look at sales, from the scare tactic to this value alignment. And then the other one that has to do with relationships and how you build relationships is called The Way of the Superior Man. So those are 2 that were recommended that are on my list that I will definitely start reading.
Interesting. Well, let me just ask you a couple more questions, and then we can wrap up the recording part, and then we can just allow people to jump in, or jump in, and if anyone wants to jump in, you can at this point. But let me ask you a question I always ask about masterminds. Are you a part of a mastermind group? Have you ever been a part of a mastermind group?
So from a mastermind standpoint, absolutely. The Scopemob is a mastermind. It's a free open mastermind. It's called Scopemob because it's created through how we market it is on Periscope. So how to get your message out there. But there's so much more to it. There's plenty of Periscope groups. I'm in a bunch of them where they teach you how to use Periscope, but you can learn how to use Periscope fairly quickly. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's hit broadcast, write it, come up with content. It's the same thing. Where the key is to using Periscope is how to use it as a tool. And there's a lot of different ways of using it as a tool. Some people think that it's, you sell on Periscope and then you send people somewhere. I like to look at it a lot differently. I like to see it as an opportunity to almost fast forward the relationship building process and then go into an offline conversation where you're now having that second and third step process conversation. You've just skipped all the introductions, the nuances and all that. Now you're getting right into, hey, what is it, tell me about yourself and how can we align our values?
Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of trying to monitor the comments here too. So Farhan was asking, where do you join the Scopemob? And feel free, anybody who wants to have a seat, go ahead and have a seat. We're kind of close to wrapping up at this point with the question, the kind of semi in my head prepared questions. But yeah, there Kristian went ahead
and link. Yeah, and so if Farhan's asking here, is there a Blab mob? Scopemob is the same. Periscope, Blab. It's not about the platform. That's just the name that's attached to it. But that's our mastermind group from a business standpoint. It's about getting your emotional discipline together, getting clear on your messaging and your branding and all of that, so that we can come together and find a group of people whose values align. That's the key thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey Farhan, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Do you want to? Yeah, and guys, feel free to go ahead and tell a little bird about this so we can kind of maybe build people and have some more people ask Kristian about his experiences. But Farhan, do you want to kind of ask Kristian any questions and maybe tell a little bit about yourself as well? Or vice versa?
Thank you so much for what you were sharing. I was really interested in hearing a bit more around sort of the mastermind groups. Like, it's a concept like a lot of my friends work with. I know many people that have successful mastermind groups, and sort of that whole concept of masterminding. It's a really powerful mechanism or tool, I guess, to kind of help get the sort of thinking aligned, but also to kind of get the feedback and get that sort of process in flow. And I'm just wondering, in terms of like aligning around values, what sort of values or what sort of like criteria would you say need to stack up? Because I'm just thinking, like, for me, my values when it comes to being online, being in business, the work I do, just as background, I work professionally in social media for like corporates and multinationals, and kind of doing some stuff on the side as well and some stuff independently. But I was just wondering, like, how do you find people with similar values, even if you're in a similar niche? And then how do you bring your mastermind to life? Like, what do you do on a regular basis to kind of get that flow going, get that feedback, and kind of vibe off of each other and learn from each other?
Yeah, so Farhan, there's a caveat to masterminds, because it's like anything else. It's like social media. It's like, any kind of hobby things. So here's the first thing that you have to look at is, number one, your business and being an entrepreneur. And I keep coming back and I'll harp on this. The definition of entrepreneur means to create new money. So when I look at where I'm spending my time, because time is the most valuable commodity that we have, it's the one commodity that is equal for everybody. Richard Branson and I and you have the exact same amount of time. There is nothing different with that one variable. So that's the one thing that we all have. So how do we spend that time? That's where the difference comes in. Mm-hmm. And what can happen, especially with Facebook groups now, is that you can get sucked into a black hole of masterminds where you're in a ton of these groups and you're like, oh, I've got to add all this value and I got to network. That's great. But at the same time, you don't want to be wasting your time You want to figure out which ones, where's the value exchange being given back in return. So if you're in a group that is a lot of, kind of just chitter chatter, that's probably not the best spot. So when you're looking at how to determine the values. Okay. I look at the groups. Number one, my group. How much value am I adding so that I can attract more people that are also going to add value? Because it comes down to where now I'm trying to point to you. Do your values and my values, do they align?
Right.
Okay. So if what I'm talking about, Farhan, when it comes to integrity, congruency, and action, because those are the three things that are most important to me. And those are what I build a foundation of success, what I build a foundation of productivity, and what I build a foundation of relationships on are those things: integrity, congruency, and action. So if what I'm talking about is something that is of high interest to you, and I'm putting information into that group that supports those values, then you're going to see that there's value in that group, and you're going to want to contribute, and that's going to create this momentum. But if you're in a group that's kind of like, just people are pulling stuff off of Google and posting links, and there's not a lot of conversation, and there's not depth, that's the hardest part about these masterminds, especially with Facebook groups, is because you're looking for new leaders to emerge so that it doesn't become another chore for you. You want it to be, a self-sustaining group. And so there's a critical mass point that you have to build up to, and you have to understand that when you're starting to create one of these groups. And once it starts to get to a certain point, then that starts to take on a life of its own. So for what I would almost recommend is participating in them before trying to just start one, until you have a clear idea of exactly what it is that you want to create. What's the purpose of your group? It's the same thing with creating a product. Don't just create a product because you think you have to have a product. Because if you want to be in the online space and you want to sell stuff, and you don't have a product that you think is going to fix something or fill a need, why don't you just go out and be an affiliate marketer and find products that align with your values?
Absolutely.
And just be the best person at selling somebody else's product. Save yourself the time and the energy and just start producing. The same thing goes with masterminds, is that if you don't see a specific need or have a clear idea of exactly what it is that is the purpose of your mastermind that's not already being created somewhere else, go contribute value to that until you identify where that one is lacking, and where you could create more, where you could find a space where your mastermind would really help serve people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just as a follow-up to that, then, from the values that you've shared, so I'm just wondering, because all the values that you've shared, those are important to me. But just recently, I kind of went through a bit of a process myself and came to the conclusion that the three values that I value the most are being of service to others, being authentic, and being authentic and I've forgotten what the third one was. It escapes me right now. I just wrote it down a couple of days ago, and it's still kind of fresh in my mind. I'm still kind of getting clear on how I show up in the world with them. But it's like they're different values to the ones that you described.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm gonna challenge your thinking a little bit. So when I say integrity and congruency, what I'm saying is that if what I say and what I do align, then I'm being authentic.
Right. Yeah.
So there's your authenticity, because you can't be authentic if you don't have integrity and you're not congruent in how you act and what you say.
Of course.
So that's that. The second thing is that I always encourage people to, if you have the belief of serving others, that's great. That's a given, because here's the way that I look at serve. Number one is, it's okay to have goals and objectives that serve you first, because how good are you at serving or helping anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself first? Because if you're trying to pour love and pour energy into people with an empty cup, you're pouring nothing on top of them. You can't give them anything. Yeah, and so so when you ask somebody, what are your goals? And the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, I want to help somebody else. You know, right there, they're struggling. Hands down, if I ask somebody, what are your goals? What's most important to you? I want to help, I want to help the poor people. Well, what the fuck do you want to do for you? Because you can't help anyone else if you're not if you're running on empty.
Of course.
So yeah. Go ahead, Daryl.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, if I'm looking at somebody that I want to help me,
mm-hmm.
how appealing is it to somebody if you can see that person is energetically drained?
Yeah, of course.
And so that's what we talk about, because I want to come back to what you were talking about, where your values align. Number one is, you got to understand how the values tie into each other. Because there's two. This is where I get into, like, when I talk about emotional discipline, when I coach clients on this aspect of this emotional discipline, you're only operating from one of two energetic levels. One is guilt, shame, resentment, and anger. The other one is joy, bliss, hope, and enlightenment. Those are the only two energies. One's a high vibrational energy, one's a low vibrational energy. What keeps you from going into the high vibrational energy from the low is holding on to those things. So think about what those emotions are: guilt, shame, resentment, overwhelm, anger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Those are all things that happened to us in the past that create those emotions. And anxiety and overwhelm has to do with the future based on past events.
Yeah.
So your character now is based off of a series of events, a cause that creates an effect that shapes who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to change the way that you think and look at who you are now, then you can start to change what I said my 3 core values were: integrity, congruency, and action.
Mm-hmm.
Because doubt is a place between fear and faith. Okay, you can either feed your fears, you can feed your faith. When you're in doubt, you're in procrastination. Doubt does not allow you to move forward, make progress, take action. Okay, so if you say that you get results, that you want to be successful, if those are the things you tell yourself, but you're not taking the action to do those, then you don't have integrity. Mm-hmm. And if your actions and your words don't align, then what up, Damien? Then yeah, if your actions and your words don't align, then you don't have congruency. So it all ties back, and it's it's a loop. Everything is connected.
Yeah. So I just as we were talking, like, my third value, it just popped back into my head, is acting with kindness. And when it comes to the being of service, like I absolutely agree with you. Like the first place in which you start by being of service is of yourself.
Yep.
Until you can be of service to yourself, you can't be of service to others.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise with acting with kindness, for me, it's about you have to act kindly to yourself before you can be kind to others. And also with the authenticity, it's about like being authentic with yourself of who you really are before you can then show up in the world, right? And be authentic in the world. And so, like, absolutely, I agree with you in terms of like applying them to yourself before you try to fill the cup of someone else or to share beyond yourself. But I'm just wondering, I guess, because like the labels I use for the values are different to the ones that you described, but from the way that you explain them, like I'm already kind of seeing actually even the acting, well, you're talking about the acting and the action. And for me, it's about acting with kindness. And so actually
it's semantics is what it comes down to. So when you decide if you want to work with somebody or if you want to align yourself with them, it doesn't have to be the exact words. What you want to do is
get the energy.
You want to trust. You want to trust how you feel here, and you get that. You understand because I have it written down right here. Every relationship, the values are based off of 3 things, and at the top of it is trust, respect, and love.
Right.
Okay, so if you come in and have a conversation with someone, you know instantly within the first 5 minutes of the conversation if you trust and respect them.
Sure.
And then the more interactions you start to build, a mutual love for that person on whatever level that is. We're not talking sexual love here. We're talking about, familial love, love of spirit. And so if you don't have that trust and respect, if when you lose trust and respect, that's the hardest thing to gain back.
Yep.
And so really that's what we're talking about, forming relationships. If I tell you that my 3 main values are integrity, congruency, and action, you're going to respect what I say and you're going to trust me based off of how you feel. They don't have to be exactly the same as your values. You can have yours, but you just want to hear what mine are and say, you know what, I like that those are his. That's really cool. I can get down with that because, I think he can help me and, I can learn from, you're going to make those decisions based off of trust, respect, and love.
Right. Yeah, because I was wondering, like, one of the podcasts I was listening to recently, they were talking about how important it is to make sure that values are aligned when you're working with people and collaborating with people. And the more that the values are aligned, the more that there's an emotional maturity with the people that you connect with and collaborate with, the more effortless it becomes, and it becomes one of those high-performing teams, where things just hum and things just flow. And I guess that was where I was kind of curious about how important it is to have the same values versus similar values versus aligned values, as opposed to having completely different ones. Like the values you've described, I'm like, I value those things. I don't value them as my highest priorities, but I do value all of those things, right? And for me, they're as important as each other, but just not the ones that I would identify as for my identity of what I value the most when it comes to business partnerships, right?
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's semantics because a lot of them are intertwined. So what it comes down to is whether you trust and respect the person based off of what they say. So let me give you a great example. I really respect and trust what Grant Cardone says in the way that he talks about 10xing. But do you notice that as it goes down the lines, like as people that listen to Grant Cardone try and get on, say, Periscope or get on somewhere and talk about 10xing, you feel like you're listening to a sleazeball salesman. They're saying the exact same thing as Grant Cardone. So why is it that I don't trust and respect what they're saying, but I trust and respect what Grant Cardone says? The reason for that is because their values, it's that idea, they're not coming off as authentic. They're not taking it in and saying it in a way that aligns with who they are. They're trying to be Grant Cardone. That's where you lose authenticity. And you can smell that shit a mile away. It's like it's like stinky socks, dude. You're not hiding them. If your feet stink, somebody in the room, everyone's licking, trying to figure out who the hell's got the stinky feet. You can't get away from it. And so if you read books and if you grab information from other people, if you're not regurgitating it, but you're taking it in and you're actually applying it, understanding it, and seeing how it aligns with you, then you have the ability to be able to reproduce that information in your own natural way. And then I can hear Farhan talk about it and I can say, you know what, I trust this guy. He knows what the fuck he's talking about.
And I'm wondering with that then, so for example, if you acknowledge the people whose wisdom you're regurgitating, like, the thing that springs to mind right now, for some bizarre reason, Zig Ziglar, right? He always used to talk about find a way to serve the many, and that will lead to greatness, right? And so I'm just wondering, like, when it comes to then not necessarily having your own version of or your own regurgitated perspective, but actually just attributing or acknowledging somebody else who's, come up with some profound insight or wisdom that actually you resonate with. I mean, for me, it's the whole thing of like standing on the shoulder of a giant, right?
So influence is built in a fashion where you're compiling information from multiple sources. So all this information, as far as it goes back, was started somewhere else.
Yep.
There's not these crazy original thoughts, right? We're taking this information from other places. So, Daryl asked me, what are my books that I like? Okay, so here I'm getting them. But what I'm doing is I'm piecing them together and I'm putting them into application where that gets lost and where regurgitation is somebody that just reads something and then goes and says, okay, this is how you do it, but they haven't done it.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you try and fit yourself into a box, and that's the hardest part for people to understand, is they want this instant gratification. They want it overnight. You're forcing it.
Yeah.
And when it's forced, it's robotic. It's not natural. It doesn't come off as natural. But when you take it and you say, okay, you know what? It comes off desperate when it's forced.
Sure.
But when you take it and you apply it, it becomes easy because it becomes second nature.
Yeah.
And that's when it's subconscious, that's when you have that ability.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Again, like I said, I mean, it's about finding people that align with you, that are going to help move you forward, because there's a lot of hype out there and there's a lot of information, misinformation. You can figure out all this stuff for free. Okay. But it would cost you a fortune in time and money. Does that make sense? It's like, where do you piece it all together? So it's finding those people that you trust, finding those people. The reason I love Blab and the reason I love Periscope is because it gives a platform to us that don't already have this huge following. It gives us an opportunity to find our people. So, Scopemob is a tribe. Find your tribe. We have another Blab on Wednesday talking about what I call mob mentality and the power of networking and support and accountability from groups. Because a lot of people, the biggest the biggest restriction that they have on themselves is their accountability. Success, when broken down on the simplest matter, simple discipline, comes down to one thing: your ability to keep a promise to yourself. And most people cannot keep a promise to themselves. They give justifications and they give all these loopholes and these opportunities for them to make excuses. And it's okay, because I'm not going to get mad at myself. Well, sure you're going to get mad at yourself. It's called guilt, shame, resentment, overwhelm, anxiety, and anger. And that's what holds you back. So it's all this cause and effect. So anybody who's interested in figuring out if what I have to offer aligns with them, I'm going to put my website in here. 2 out of 4 ways of working with me are up and available now, and the rest will be coming here in the next couple weeks. And then they can always check me out. My podcast just went live today. So it's on iTunes. It's called Healthy Success. So my buddy Ty Tyler just jumped in. Yeah.
I think the main thing was really kind of just around the sort of how to use the mastermind groups, how to be a part of, or how to facilitate with it in a way that you contribute, but also you get the value back that you need.